With the revelation that high-level advisors close to President Trump were in constant communication with Russians known to U.S. intelligence during the campaign, the issue of the president's tax returns becomes more and more critical. As our political analyst Carl Bernstein reported in the last hour, an investigation could touch on potential financial ties, if any, between Mr. Trump and Russia. The tax returns could also answer a lot of questions about that. As you know, he's not releasing them. However, Congress could actually make it happen. Phil Mattingly explains how.
The only one that cares about my tax returns are the reporters.
Tax returns. Tax returns.
Tax returns.
Donald Trump's tax returns.
People didn't care. They voted for him.
Aren't going to be released anytime soon.
Let me make this very clear. Most Americans are very focused on what their tax returns will look like while President Trump is in office, not what his look like.
But even as Trump's staff sticks to the line that they won't be released until the completion of an ongoing audit, there is actually a way they could become public.
Well, I'm trying to do in the Congress what the president couldn't do for himself, and that is give us his tax returns.
Here's how it would work. 2 committees in Congress have jurisdiction over tax issues. The chairman of those committees, through an obscure 1924 law, actually have the ability to obtain any American's tax returns, including Donald Trump. And they have the power to reveal that tax information for any American, including Donald Trump. It's been done before, when it was decided for the public good that lawmakers would vote to release a staff report about then-President Richard Nixon's confidential tax return information. And that, according to Congressman Bill Pascrell, is the same reason he believes the committee should pursue releasing Trump's taxes now.
The American people are on the right path. I'm just a conduit here to get the information out to the American people. They deserve to know this. They deserve to know if their president is dealing in the foreign affairs of other countries and whether other countries are dealing in our foreign affairs. And if you don't think I'm talking about Russia, you're wrong.
But, at least for the moment, it's unlikely to happen. And here's why. It's Democrats who are clamoring to use this power. And Democrats don't control anything on Capitol Hill.
That law directs us to look at tax administration, only look at private tax returns in the case of the tax administration. That is clearly not the case here.
Congressman Kevin Brady chairs the House Ways and Means Committee and has pushed back hard on the idea that this lines up with the intent of the law at all.
If you let Congress begin rummaging around for political purposes in the tax returns of the president, what stops them from doing it to everyday Americans? That would be an abuse of power.
Brady's point, despite Trump breaking nearly 40 years of precedent on candidates releasing their tax returns, there is no specific administrative reason that would force the committee to act. And until that arises, don't expect Congress to provide any more insight than Trump himself has up to this point.
It's none of your business.
And Anderson, the question is, what happens next if Republicans aren't willing to go along with this? I asked Congressman Pascrell that, and he said, look, there's not necessarily a plan B, there's an expansion of plan A. He's in this for the long term, the long game, and he believes that every time kind of a new revelation comes out related to Donald Trump and his relationship with Russia or other foreign countries, that could help build support for this. He said he's been talking to members on both sides of the aisle. He's been talking to his leadership, and it's worth noting, the Senate committee also has the power to do this. He's been talking to them as well, but he recognizes it is a long path forward, and as I noted in the piece, Chairman Brady, Kevin Brady, makes very clear he does not believe this lines up with the intent of the law, and until that changes, it's very unlikely, at least on the House side of things, it's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
Anderson?
Phil Mattingly. Phil, thanks very much. Joining me now is former Labor Secretary and UC Berkeley Professor of Public Policy, Rbreich, author of Saving Capitalism for the Many, Not the Few, and with us again, CNN political commentator and Trump supporter Jeffrey Lord. Secretary Reich, I mean, what do you make of this? Is this a step that Congress should take, trying to obtain the president's tax returns?
I do think it is a very important step that Congress should take. And in terms of it being an administrative matter, I can't imagine a more important administrative matter than making sure that our president has not been engaged with a foreign power, in this case Russia, in basically loading the election and turning the election to his favor. Now, I'm not saying that he's done that, but a lot of evidence is accumulating, Anderson, and every day that goes by, the distrust of the public grows. And I think one important step that Donald Trump has to make is to disclose his taxes. In 2008, for example, Donald Trump Jr. told a real estate conference that Russian money is pouring into the Trump organization and that a disproportionate cross-section of their assets come from Russia. Presumably he was talking about Russian tycoons and oligarchs. Well, that's important information. That would show up in the tax returns, because you can see in terms of interest on loans exactly who Trump owes money to. I mean, I can't imagine a more important set of issues here.
My understanding on what he was actually referring to was, I guess, a very rich Russian guy bought one of the mansion from the Trumps in Florida, paid a huge amount of money for it. My understanding, that's what he was referring to. But again, we don't know for sure, because we don't really know the extent of any business dealings they may or may not.
And we need to know. I mean, Anderson, if this were just an idle kind of question about, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have tax returns? It's too bad Donald Trump violated and broke the tradition for 40 years. That would be one thing. But we are in the midst of a potential constitutional crisis. There's possibly treasonous behavior in terms of staff members, or perhaps Donald Trump himself, working with Russia and Russian operatives to actually interfere in the United States 2016 presidential election on behalf of Donald Trump.
Jeffrey, you don't seem as concerned.
No, there's two words for this, Anderson. It's called fishing expedition. The reason to release his taxes, as far as his opponents are concerned and the media is concerned, is so they can, plow through them and say, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this, and then, maybe we should have an investigation here, maybe we should have an investigation here. I have said, as you know, all along, he should never release his taxes. I think we have gotten way off the mark with public officials releasing their taxes here. We've had plenty of presidents of the United States, most of them, 36 of them, I think, by count, who never released their taxes. And the country survived just fine. I think we should get back to it. They have a right to privacy. Leave them alone.
Right, but given all the questions raised about Russia, even with that?
If you want to investigate the Russian thing, then let's do it. Let's investigate the intelligence community, the leaks, the whole 9 yards. Let's go in that direction. But I just think that his taxes, I mean, I just...
Why wouldn't you have an investigation?
Let me just say something.
Go ahead.
I think it is very, very difficult right now for the American public to rely on the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is dominated by Republicans, or even rely necessarily on the FBI, which reports to the new Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who was a key player in Donald Trump's election and campaign. What you need to do is have a bipartisan investigation. Part of that investigation has got to be to look at Donald Trump's taxes.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I mean, I just don't think that this is very productive, and this sets a horrible precedent. I mean, why should we be going into anybody's taxes? If you want to look at taxes...
What could be more productive than to make sure that our system of elections in 2016, our presidential election, was not violated in terms of the integrity of that election?
Getting the economy back on gear? I mean, I think all of those things. Earlier, we played clips of various people, including President Trump, saying that people didn't care. The only people who seem to care about that, I think the president's right, is the media and his opponents. But the people who voted for him...
Wait a minute. This makes no sense at all. If you say, first of all, the assertion that the people don't seem to care is just an assertion. And right now...
He's elected. He's president of the United States.
If the people are getting more and more information that Donald Trump's aides and people who are in his campaign were in continuous contact with Russian operatives at a time when we know Russia was intervening in the election on Trump's behalf, well, then I'm sorry. A lot of Americans do have an interest in those tax returns, and they have a lot of interest in knowing what was going on. There is nothing more sacred than our election and our democratic process.
Jeffrey Lord, couldn't Donald Trump just alleviate all this by saying, you know what, here are all the contacts people in my campaign had. Here are the phone conversations. Here are the Russians. Why not do that?
I mean, the implication here, the sinister implication, is that he was conspiring with the Russians.
No, I mean, I don't know what we don't know what the implication is. So why not just come forward and say?
I think as I see these stories developing and listening,
but why not just come forward and say, here are the contacts that were had?
I mean, I just don't think it's that big a deal. I don't think it's. But
if you don't think it's a big deal, wait a minute.
If we're going to make it a big deal, Mr. Secretary, then let's investigate it. Let's get all this intelligence stuff out there on the table.
Some of us actually remember Richard Nixon and a 3-bit, 2-bit burglary in the Watergate complex, the cover-up the cover-up was almost worse than the crime.
I'm glad you mentioned
the question everybody asked is, what did Nixon know and when did he know it?
Okay.
Well, everybody is now asking, what did Trump know and when did he know it?
Rbreich, appreciate it. Mr. Secretary, Jeffrey Lord as well. Coming up, the president's pick for labor secretary is out. A closer look at why. Andrew Puster with Drew next.